I hope you remember that last week we started the novena, although actually on the Saturday evening I'm not sure you would have said the novena prayer because the novena actually started on Sunday, the 7th of July. I'm referring to the novena to Our Lady of Mount Carmel, whose statue you see here in the sanctuary. And so this is really the 7th day of that novena. And for the next 3 days, the 7th, 8th, and 9th day, we're giving a little special festivity and solemnity to these evening masses. It just so happens that this year the days fall such that we begin the Triduum, that's what we call the 3 days prior to the actual feast day. They fall on a weekend, so we're just using the Sunday schedule, and of course the Sunday liturgy. This is the 15th Sunday of Ordinary Time. However, my words to you tonight will be about the Blessed Virgin Mary, and likewise tomorrow night, and I'm not going to repeat what I say tonight, tomorrow night, so if you want to come back again tomorrow, you're most welcome. In fact, we encourage you to certainly set aside the time for Tuesday evening to help us celebrate the feast of Our Lady of Mount Carmel. The Carmelite friars who have been here for 100 years have her as their patroness of the Carmelite order, but we also would have an obligation really to foster devotion to Our Lady of Mount Carmel. On Sunday evening, we're having a very special Vesper service. I'll tell you a little bit about that after, as the announcement at the end of the Mass. How I would love to be a priest in order to preach about the Blessed Virgin Mary. One sermon would be sufficient to say everything I think about this subject. I'd first make people understand how little is known by us about her life. We shouldn't say unlikely things or things we don't know about. These words were spoken by the patroness of this parish, St. Therese. They were told to her sister, Pauline, who was also known as Mother Agnes, the prioress of the Little Carmel at the time, and they were spoken a little more than a month before she died. St. Therese died on September 30th, 1997. How I would love to be a priest in order to preach about the Blessed Virgin Mary. Well, I'm blessed to be a priest who gets to preach about the Blessed Virgin Mary. I've been doing so for just about 40 years. I don't think I preached too much the first year of my ordination, but it is certainly, for me, always one of the greatest expressions of my priesthood to preach about the Blessed Virgin Mary, particularly during this time of the year when we preach about Our Lady of Mount Carmel. Therese goes on to say that for a sermon on the Blessed Virgin Mary to please her, to please me, she says, and do me any good, I must see her real life, not her imagined life. I am sure her real life was very simple. She lived by faith, just like ourselves. We know very well, she says, that the Blessed Virgin is Queen of Heaven and earth, but she is more mother than queen. This last statement is often quoted, perhaps you have heard it. Mary is queen and mother, but she's more mother than queen. She goes on to say, we should not say on account of her prerogatives that she surpasses all the saints in glory, just as the sun at its rising makes the stars disappear from sight. And then she exclaims, my God, How strange that would be. A mother who makes her children's glory vanish? I myself think just the contrary. I believe she'll increase the splendor of the elect very much. To me, that's one of the most lovely statements about the Blessed Virgin Mary, that she's not a mother who tries to outshine her children like any mother, good mother. She wants her children to shine, to attain to the fullness of life, or as we so often hear nowadays, to be the best version of themselves. A mother isn't trying to overshadow her children. So during these days, final days of the novena, and as we prepare now for her feast, let's keep that in mind. We're going to be honoring Mary with all the love in our hearts, but in doing so, and I'm sure it pleases her very much, we are the ones who become beneficiaries, of it were, of honoring such a mother. What the Blessed Virgin has more than we have, says Therese, is the privilege of not being able to sin. She was exempt from the stain of original sin. But on the other hand, she wasn't as fortunate as we are, since she didn't have the Blessed Virgin to love. Another astonishing statement of Therese. And she goes on to say, if I were the Blessed Virgin Mary and she were Therese, I would want to become Therese so that she could become the Blessed Virgin Mary. These sentiments and thoughts of our patroness should help us, and it certainly should help me preach about the Blessed Virgin Mary in a simple, practical way. Keep it real, so to speak. In order to do so, I want to stay close to the idea that Mary is more mother than queen. However, she is the Queen Mother, and I will have something to say about that tomorrow. The Church loves to sing to Mary in this way. Salve Regina, hail, Holy Queen. She is our life, our sweetness, and our hope. Let us imitate little Therese, who says she put all her heart into speaking to Mary, into consecrating herself to her as a child throwing itself into the arms of its mother, asking her to watch over her. She did that, of course, as a child in preparing for her first Holy Communion. Mount Carmel was a holy place to the Jewish people, even to this day. And this is really on account of the prophet Elijah. So I want to tell you about that to connect these words about Mary to, more specifically, to her grand title as Our Lady of Mount Carmel. In fact, we find in the Bible this expression, the beauty of Carmel, used as a figure of God's blessing on his people. And it also stands for Mary. The Church has, as it were, appropriated these sacred scriptures, passages about Mary in the Bible, to refer them to Mary. There's a pious story that an unhappy suitor of the Blessed Virgin retired to Mount Carmel when he was not chosen, rather St. Joseph was chosen to be wedded to Mary. This suitor is said to be Agabus, who's mentioned in the Acts of the Apostles, and there's even a tradition of hermits living on Mount Carmel since the time of Elijah. So he retired to Mount Carmel to live this life in imitation of the great prophet Elijah, standing in the presence of the living God And then with the advent of Christ and with the proclamation of the gospel, they all became Christians, followers of Christ, living on Mount Carmel in the spirit of Elijah, but now as Christians. And this tradition of living a life devoted to God continued into the 12th century, during the time when the Crusaders and other pilgrims from Europe occupied the Holy Land. So I'm giving you a little bit of context for Mount Carmel. Of course, you can look these things up, so I don't want to bore you with things that you already know or things you can look up. But to appreciate how venerable this title of Mary is, it's important to know its ancient history. And I mentioned pious history. Of course, we don't have to believe that this 𝗟𝗱𝗆𝘆 actually, as a disgruntled suitor, went to Mount Carmel, but the fact that in the Christian imagination, already Mount Carmel was taking on a special significance, and even other pious histories, the Holy Family making pilgrimages to Mount Carmel, which really isn't that far from Nazareth. It's not that far from Nazareth. We find these in our Carmelite monasteries, paintings of the Holy Family walking to Carmel and having converse with the holy hermits on Mount Carmel. In keeping with this tradition, Carmel, the Carmelite order that is, consecrates itself to Mary. Mary is the lady of the place. The hermits bound themselves to the service of Our Lady. This is why we always say that Carmel is all Mary's. There's truly a significant and historical connection between Mount Carmel, the hermits on Mount Carmel, and this special devotion to Our Lady. So it behooves us Carmelites, who have served this parish since its beginning 100 years ago, to imitate the faith and virtues of Mary, and to foster devotion to the Mother of God, especially under the title of Our Lady of Mount Carmel. The Church teaches that one should ever hold in great esteem the practices and exercises of devotion to the Blessed Virgin, which have been recommended for centuries by the teaching authority of the Church. The scapular of Our Lady of Mount Carmel is one of those venerable exercises of devotion to Our Lady, and along with the Rosary, it's one of the oldest also in the Church. So tomorrow and the days, on the Feast of Our Lady, we'll actually say a lot more about it, but I want to orient you towards the meaning of wearing the brown scapular. Last Sunday, I asked the penitents to pray to Our Lady of Mount Carmel, and I said, you know about that? And they were a little bit vague, many of them. I was surprised how many were a little bit vague about Our Lady of Mount Carmel. But when I said, well, you know about the brown scapular, and right away they said, oh yeah, Father, I'm wearing the scapular. Well, yeah, that's what we got from Our Lady of Mount Carmel. And there's a beautiful meaning to the wearing of a garment that is given to us by Our Lady. So Mary is asking you to renew your consecration to her, or to consecrate yourself to her Immaculate Heart. Consecrate yourself willingly by receiving and wearing the brown scapular. It will be a sign and pledge of your love for her and of her love for you. As Carmelite friars, we take it as our mission to foster and perpetuate our Lord's love for his mother in the Church and in the world today. Mary May the loving memory of Mary accompany you day and night, wherever you are, wherever you go, and whatever you do. May the memory be part of your conversation, your recreation, your sorrow, and your rest. You are indeed my heart and soul, O Virgin Mother. Hopefully this will be more and more our sentiment as we go along these days and prepare for this beautiful feast of Our Lady of Mount Carmel. So it's going to be important to instruct you properly about the meaning of the scapular and why it is such a venerable devotion, and really what a beautiful thing to wear a garment given to us by our Blessed Mother.